Dr. Michael Harrison had never faced a case like this in his entire 20-year career. In front of him lay a soldier officially declared dead 10 years ago in a massive explosion. Yet the scars on his body, extraordinary cellular regeneration, and organs showing no signs of aging defied every rule of medical science. How could he be alive? And why had an entire decade of his life disappeared from his memory? The hospital file identified him as Staff Sergeant David Mitchell, born in 1985, with meticulously recorded military service. He had died in a bombing attack in Afghanistan, honored as a hero. His family had been notified. A state funeral had taken place. A tombstone had been erected. And now, here he was, lying on a treatment table in 2023, 10 years after his supposed death. At first glance, he seemed like any other patient, but once examinations began, abnormalities emerged immediately. His heartbeat was unusually slow, yet steady. Blood pressure was ideal. Blood values were near perfect, with no trace of chronic disease. Any health problems expected for his age were completely absent. X-ray images delivered the first shock. His bone structure resembled that of a healthy 25-year-old. Bone density was above normal. Joints were pristine, with no signs of wear or calcification. It was as if time itself had paused over him. Blood tests revealed even more astonishing results. Telomere lengths matched those of a young adult. Cellular damage indicators were minimal. Genetic repair mechanisms were unusually active. Aging hormones were suppressed, while growth factors surged. In the field of aging science, these results bordered on revolutionary. His mental condition added another layer of mystery. His last memory was of the Afghanistan explosion. The following 10 years were a complete void. From 2013 to 2023, nothing existed in his mind. Temporal amnesia of this type was nearly unheard of, yet all other memories remained intact. Childhood, military service, moments with his wife and children, every detail crystal clear. Neurological tests uncovered further anomalies. Brain activity was above normal. Nerve conduction speed was accelerated. Reflexes were sharp. Cognitive functions flawless. Memory loss existed solely within that decade-long gap. Selective amnesia of this nature was extremely rare in medical literature. Dr. Harrison consulted with colleagues. This was no case for a single physician. A multidisciplinary approach was critical. Endocrinology, neurology, genetics, aging science. Each perspective was necessary to unravel the mystery. The patient's family was contacted, and shock swept through them. David Mitchell had died. Funerals had been held. Lives had moved on. His wife had remarried. Children had grown. Could they accept that the man before them was truly David? Genetic testing was ordered, the definitive proof. Blood samples were taken and sent to the laboratory. Results would take days, but Dr. Harrison had no doubt. This was David Mitchell. Fingerprints, dental records, physical traits, all matched perfectly. For security, the patient was isolated. Media exposure could spark panic. Military involvement raised the stakes to national importance. The hospital enforced maximum security protocols. Dr. Harrison began extended conversations with David. Calm yet bewildered, he struggled to comprehend a world frozen in 2013. A decade of technological advancements, social media evolution, political shifts, everything was alien. It was as though he had lived in a time capsule. Have you ever faced an event science cannot explain? A reality so impossible, it challenges belief? This story has only begun. Even more astonishing details await. Could such a phenomenon truly exist? Share your thoughts as the mystery unfolds. That night, Dr. Harrison pored over medical journals at home. Suspended animation, cryogenic preservation, cellular regeneration. He explored every possible explanation. Yet conventional medicine fell short. Was this the dawn of a revolutionary discovery? Or a darker secret lurking beneath the surface? On the third morning, genetic test results finally arrived. Dr. Harrison's hands trembled as he opened the report. The verdict was absolute, undeniable. The patient was indeed Staff Sergeant David Mitchell. Every detail of his genetic makeup matched perfectly. Comparison with family registry records left no doubt. Yet this revelation shattered every rule of science and reality Dr. Harrison had known. Corridors of the hospital buzzed with unusual activity. Senior administrators convened emergency meetings. Security measures escalated rapidly. This was no ordinary medical anomaly. Military implications, potential classification as a state secret, and the risk of media exposure demanded extreme caution. Every step had to be carefully orchestrated. When the family arrived, the emotional impact was immediate and intense. Sarah Mitchell had spent 10 years rebuilding her life after the presumed death of her husband. Mourning had consumed years, yet she had eventually remarried and established a new home. Now, standing before her was a man with vacant eyes, a living ghost of her past. The children were equally unsettled. 10-year-old Emily struggled to recall her father. 13-year-old James had embraced his stepfather as his true parent figure. To them, David was a stranger, a hazy figure from old photographs suddenly come to life, familiar, yet disturbingly distant. Sarah's new husband, Robert Carter, was present as well. Legally, Sarah's first marriage had ended with death, and her second marriage was valid. But now the first husband had returned from the dead, which marriage held true under the law. The legal system had no precedent for this impossible situation. David Mitchell's bewilderment was profound. His wife had aged. Streaks of gray streaked her hair. Fine wrinkles framed her eyes. His children had grown, transformed by a decade he had not experienced. For him, mere days had passed. Yet 10 years had elapsed for his loved ones. The temporal chasm felt insurmountable. Dr. Harrison fought to remain objective amid the emotional chaos. The patient's mental state was critical. Memory gaps, distorted perception of time, inability to recognize his own family. These were acute trauma symptoms. Psychiatric support was essential. But first, the scientific mystery demanded resolution. Advanced testing was launched. Blood samples were sent to multiple laboratories. Radiological scans were repeated. Neurological examinations were intensified. If conventional medicine could not explain this phenomenon, then an entirely unknown anomaly was being confronted. Microscopic analyses were performed on David's body. Tissue biopsies and cellular samples were collected. The results astounded the medical team. Cellular structure was flawless. Signs of aging, or wear, were entirely absent. Even minute cellular damage expected in a normal adult was missing. It was as if his body had been freshly manufactured. Military records were scrutinized. David's final mission in Afghanistan, his death report, funeral proceedings, everything was re-examined. Oddities surfaced. A closed coffin had been used, and the family was not allowed to view the body. Security reasons were cited, yet the details now seemed suspicious. The death report itself raised further questions. No body parts had been recovered in the explosion. Only traces of blood and personal items were found. The conclusion of death had been based on this limited evidence. Now, it appeared inadequate, almost deliberately misleading. Attempts to contact military comrades revealed more anomalies. Personnel who had served with David were located, and details about his last mission were gathered. One striking fact emerged. On the day of the explosion, David had been on a classified special operation, not a routine patrol. Mission specifics were highly classified, with extremely limited access. But David's condition justified obtaining clearance. Official requests were submitted. Responses would arrive within days. Perhaps the key to the mystery lay hidden within this secret operation. Meanwhile, media rumors began to stir. Hospital staff whispers spread across social networks. Although mainstream channels had not yet reported, leaks were inevitable. Stories like this travel fast. Controlling the narrative was becoming increasingly difficult. Security at the hospital tightened. Visitor access was restricted. Elite security guards were stationed on the patient's floor, and media representatives were barred. Yet in the digital age, complete secrecy was nearly impossible. Any leak could ignite a public storm. David's psychological state remained fragile. He recognized his family yet could not connect emotionally. The 10-year gap loomed immense and disorienting. The modern world felt alien. Technological advances astonished him. Everything had changed, while he remained untouched by time. What would you do in his place? How would it feel to see your loved ones age a decade while you stayed the same? Even stranger revelations are yet to come in this story. Subscribe to continue uncovering the mystery. That evening, Dr. Harrison convened a video conference with international colleagues. The case had already begun to reverberate across the medical community. Experts worldwide debated possibilities. Similar cases were investigated, yet nothing matched this phenomenon. It was unprecedented, perhaps the first in recorded history. On the fifth day, authorization to access military records finally arrived. Dr. Harrison and the hospital administration received clearance to examine classified files. The documents were delivered by a courier under strict security escort. Inside lay details of David Mitchell's final mission. As they read, disbelief and astonishment swept through the room. The operation had been codenamed Project Lazarus. It was far from a conventional combat mission. This was part of an experimental medical program designed to test revolutionary techniques for saving severely wounded soldiers in the field. David Mitchell was one of the volunteer subjects. According to the files, the explosion in Afghanistan had indeed occurred. David had been critically injured, pronounced clinically dead. Yet, an experimental life support system had been activated. Advanced cryogenic technology, a cellular regeneration serum, and artificial coma protocols all were applied simultaneously. The goal was nothing short of resurrection. For 10 years, the program had continued in secret laboratories. David's body had been kept in suspended animation. Cellular aging had been arrested, organ functions maintained at minimal levels, and brain activity preserved, yet memory formation had been deliberately blocked. Dr. Harrison felt a shiver run down his spine. This was not just medical experimentation, it was inhumane. Keeping a human being unconscious for a decade, deceiving his family about his death, these were unconscionable acts. Yet, from a medical standpoint, it was an unprecedented success. Even more shocking revelations emerged. David was not the only subject. 15 soldiers had been enrolled in Project Lazarus. Most had failed and truly perished. Only 3 had survived the experiment. David was one of them. Questions immediately arose. What had happened to the other 2 survivors? Were they still in laboratories? Had they already awakened? The documents provided no answers. Only the haunting note, process continuing. Meanwhile, tensions at the hospital escalated. David's family visited daily, but struggled to adapt. Sarah Mitchell was torn. Her first husband had returned, but he was now a stranger. Robert Carter, her new husband, tried to remain understanding, but the situation strained everyone emotionally. The children faced even greater confusion. Emily attempted to recall her father but found the memories elusive. James had bonded with his stepfather, making David feel like a distant figure from the stories his mother once told. Media chaos erupted. A staff member had leaked information. Social media posts went viral. Headlines such as "Soldier returns from death after 10 years" began circulating. Calls flooded the hospital. Curiosity turned to frenzy as people debated whether science fiction had come to life. News channels sent reporters to the hospital. Security measures tightened, yet media pressure intensified. Stories like this captivated audiences. Everyone wondered, could such a resurrection really be possible? Dr. Harrison was compelled to hold a press briefing. David's identity remained confidential, but general details were shared. The case was described as exceptionally rare, with ongoing research. Yet reporters pressed for answers. The world was hungry for truth. Government agencies became involved. The Departments of Health and Defense, along with intelligence services, monitored the situation closely. Instructions to prevent leaks were issued. This was now a matter of national security, containing highly sensitive information. Hospital protocols reached maximum security. David was moved to a specialized ward. Visitors were restricted, and press access forbidden. Paradoxically, secrecy only heightened public curiosity. Why was such information being withheld? Meanwhile, David's memory began to return in fragments. Confused images, partial recollections, and faint sounds from the past 10 years slowly emerged. But what he remembered was horrifying. Dark laboratories, strange machinery, and medical procedures that resembled a nightmare. Psychiatrist Dr. Jennifer Adams began working with him intensively. Post-traumatic stress disorder, identity confusion, and temporal disorientation were just some of the challenges. Treatment protocols were unprecedented. No case in medical literature resembled this. Physically, David was changing too. His reflexes sharpened, muscle strength surged, and overall body function seemed enhanced. It was as if his body entered a self-renewal mode during the awakening process, a phenomenon of enormous medical interest. The research team expanded. Biomedical engineers, genetics experts, neurology professors all collaborated. The world might be witnessing the discovery of the century. Could resurrection from death truly be possible? International scientists showed immediate interest. Harvard, MIT, and Oxford experts requested collaboration. Knowledge sharing promised scientific breakthroughs, but national security priorities imposed strict limitations. A tense conflict arose between open science and secrecy. David's family felt adrift in this chaos. He was no longer the man they had known. 10 years of experiences were lost. Shared memories were gone. Family dynamics had shifted completely. How would they adapt? Which reality would they accept? Which side would you take? The pursuit of scientific knowledge, or the preservation of family peace? State secrecy, or public right to know? How would you navigate such an ethical minefield? Share your thoughts, and subscribe to continue this extraordinary story. Then, at midnight, the hospital alarms blared. David Mitchell had vanished. In his room, only an open window and sheets hanging outside remained. Security footage was scoured, but no trace was found. Just as he had returned after 10 years, he had disappeared again. During the morning hours, a massive search operation was launched around the hospital. Police, FBI, and special security units swept every corner of the city. David Mitchell's escape was no longer just a medical anomaly. It had escalated into a national security crisis. A person carrying state secrets was missing, and his capture had become a top priority. Security footage was scrutinized for hours. The precise moment of his exit was determined. David had descended from a window using sheets, crossed the hospital garden, scaled the wall, and vanished into the streets. His movements were calculated, professional. No ordinary patient could have executed such an escape. His military training had been deeply ingrained. Dr. Harrison was overwhelmed with guilt. He had failed to keep his patient under supervision. Yet David's physical capabilities far exceeded expectations. The cryogenic process had not only preserved, but enhanced his body functions. Harrison realized he had underestimated the man lying before him. The family was in shock. Sarah Mitchell, tearful and distraught, gave a statement to the police. She had no idea where David could have gone. Friends, habits, routines from a decade ago, none were relevant in today's world. He was a ghost of the past, navigating a foreign present. Meanwhile, the media frenzy hit its peak. Headlines screamed, "Soldier returned from death escapes hospital!" Television programs dissected the case. Conspiracy theories went viral on social media, and allegations of a government cover-up circulated rapidly. The Department of Homeland Security activated crisis protocols. Media outlets were instructed to restrict reporting, and content filtering began for national security reasons. Yet, in the digital age, information flow was impossible to contain. International outlets also picked up the story, amplifying global interest. Amid this chaos, a startling development emerged. Similar incidents began appearing across the country. A call from Miami reported a sailor, presumed dead in a sea accident 10 years prior, had appeared at his family's door. In Denver, a pilot, thought to have perished in a traffic accident, had been spotted at an airport. Dr. Harrison noticed a pattern. These were not isolated incidents. Other subjects from Project Lazarus were awakening. According to the documents, 3 cases had survived successfully. Now all were returning to consciousness around the same time. Coincidence seemed impossible. An emergency meeting was convened by the Department of Health. Resources were stretched thin. Even one case posed immense logistical challenges. 3 simultaneous incidents across different cities were unprecedented. Expertise was limited. Protocols non-existent. Military authorities panicked. Project Lazarus had been classified. Details could not be disclosed to the public. Yet reality could no longer be hidden. A damage control strategy was urgently needed. Could some truths be revealed without compromising security? The search for David intensified. Helicopters scanned the city. Thermal cameras were deployed. Tracking dogs combed the streets. Every available resource was used. But David was trained to survive. Urban environments offered him endless hiding possibilities. His intelligence background made capture exceedingly difficult. By the 3rd day, his location was finally discovered. An abandoned building near a decommissioned military base. Approach was cautious. Armed resistance was a possibility. Yet the encounter was unexpectedly calm. David surrendered without conflict. Once back in custody, his mental state showed changes. He was more lucid, partially aware. Memory fragments of the missing 10 years began to return, but the memories were disturbing. Medical procedures, invasive experiments, and consciousness manipulation left deep psychological scars. Psychiatric evaluations intensified. Post-traumatic stress disorder, dissociative identity disorder, temporal displacement syndrome, all were under consideration. Standard therapy methods offered little guidance. This was uncharted territory. Meanwhile, other survivors presented unique challenges. The Miami sailor displayed aggression and did not recognize his family. The Denver pilot had complete memory loss. Each case required individualized care. The government decided to pursue partial disclosure. The existence of the experimental program would be acknowledged, but most details remained classified. Minimal information was released, and limited collaboration with the scientific community was permitted. A press conference was held. The Secretary of Health confirmed the Advanced Life Support Research Program, describing it as an effort to save severely injured military personnel. Success rates were low, and side effects significant. Public reaction was mixed. Some celebrated the scientific breakthrough. Others condemned human rights violations. Religious debates over soul and resurrection emerged. Ethical dilemmas dominated discussions. International scrutiny followed. Human experimentation protocols were questioned, and potential Geneva Convention violations were raised. Medical ethics committees launched investigations. Families contemplated legal action. No informed consent had been given. Deception was involved, and emotional trauma was immense. Compensation claims and class action lawsuits were discussed. David's family situation grew more complex. Marriage status was uncertain. Child custody issues emerged. Property rights became complicated. Courts had no precedent for such circumstances. The scientific community was fascinated. Research opportunities were unprecedented, but ethical limitations were paramount. Subject rights had to be protected, and international collaboration faced political obstacles. Media coverage reached global scale. Documentary crews arrived. Book deals were offered. Film rights were explored. Conflicts arose between commercial exploitation and scientific integrity. The impact of this story resonated through every sector. Science, ethics, law, family, and military were all affected. Solutions were not simple, and consequences were long-term, leaving the world grappling with questions that had no easy answers. When the 6th month arrived, David Mitchell made his final decision. After months of treatment, psychiatric support, and intensive family counseling, he finally determined the path his life would take. He had accepted that returning to his old life was impossible. The 10-year void could never be bridged. He needed a new identity, a fresh start, and a life rebuilt from scratch. Sarah Mitchell had reached her own conclusion. Her first marriage would remain in the past. The life she had created with her new husband, Robert Carter, was real, present, and tangible. David belonged to her past. An amicable separation was the healthiest solution, especially for the children's sake. The children had adapted surprisingly well. Emily had learned to recognize David as her father, but understood that Robert Carter was her real parent. James had developed a cautious but genuine friendship with David. It was not a father-son bond, but a mentor-student relationship, based on guidance rather than affection alone. The government initiated a classified program. David and the other 2 survivors were assigned new identities and relocated to different cities. Psychiatric support continued. Financial compensation was provided, and living expenses were fully covered. Official records would treat them as deceased, allowing them to live freely under new names. Meanwhile, the scientific world continued its research. Cryogenic technology advanced, and memory preservation methods were rigorously studied. But human experimentation was officially banned. Ethical standards were tightened, and comprehensive measures were implemented to prevent similar incidents in the future. Dr. Harrison underwent a profound career transformation. He specialized in medical ethics and became a university lecturer. Sharing his first-hand experiences, he educated future generations of doctors, emphasizing human dignity, patient rights, and ethical responsibility in groundbreaking medical research. Media attention gradually faded. New stories and agendas replaced the old frenzy. Yet this event secured its place in medical history. It became a case study in ethics courses and a cautionary tale for future researchers, reminding them that scientific ambition must respect human life. Project Lazarus was officially terminated. Laboratories were emptied, personnel reassigned, and all documents archived. Officially, the project never existed, but the scientific community had learned valuable lessons. Human life is not a laboratory experiment. David settled into a quiet life under his new identity in a small town. He became a skilled carpenter, working with wood to create tangible results in a peaceful, steady routine. He severed ties with his past, adapted to modern life, and formed new friendships and habits. Yet at night, dreams sometimes brought him back to the void of those 10 lost years. Dark laboratories, strange medical devices, and consciousness confusion haunted him. Therapy continued, and with time, even these fragmented memories began to lose their grip. The other 2 subjects had also carved out new lives. The Miami sailor established a thriving fish farm, while the Denver pilot launched a small regional airline. Each lived far from their former lives, disconnected from each other to ensure safety and stability. Families navigated the compensation and legal processes. Financial support was provided by the government. Legal issues were resolved, marital statuses clarified, and child custody decisions finalized. Everyone attempted to return to a semblance of normal life. International attention followed. Oversight mechanisms were strengthened. Human rights committees reviewed past actions, and protocols were developed to prevent future violations. The Lazarus program became a reference point for global ethical standards in medical research. A comprehensive scientific article was published detailing ethical breaches, medical findings, and research insights. Transparency was emphasized, providing guidance and lessons for future studies, while safeguarding against repeating these mistakes. What lessons emerged? Human dignity must always take precedence. Scientific progress cannot overstep ethical boundaries. Patient rights are paramount, informed consent is mandatory, and government power must never be abused. Yet positive outcomes also arose. Cryogenic technology found new applications in organ transplantation. Memory preservation techniques were tested for Alzheimer's treatment. Trauma recovery protocols improved. Science was harnessed for genuine humanitarian benefit. Had David's story truly ended? Perhaps it was merely a new beginning. From death's shadow, he had begun to live a real, tangible life. The past remained behind him, while the future awaited. This is humanity's eternal struggle, to rise again after every fall. How do you interpret this story? Which matters more, human dignity or scientific advancement? Should governments ever conduct such experiments? How should families navigate such impossible circumstances? How can ethical dilemmas like these be resolved? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for following this extraordinary journey. This story explored human nature, ethical boundaries, and family bonds. Subscribe to our channel to ensure you don't miss similar stories, unexplained phenomena, and ethical debates. These extraordinary situations may occur in real life too. Science advances, technology evolves, but human emotion, love, forgiveness, and adaptation remain constants that never change. Final thought. Every ending is also a beginning. David Mitchell had died but was reborn with a new identity. Perhaps life's meaning lies in constant transformation, perpetual renewal, and the persistent chance to start anew. If this story resonated with you, share it. Engage friends in the debate about ethics, science, and humanity. Together, we can explore the right path for mankind. Until the next extraordinary story, mysteries abound, unexplained events continue. We will keep uncovering, exploring, and sharing. Reality often surpasses fiction.